is David Sousley, and today I'll be giving a presentation on operating systems and firewalls. There's going to be a few operating systems and firewalls that we take a look at today. We're going to be taking a look at Windows Server 2019, Ubuntu 20.04 LTS, Windows Firewall, and IP tables. So Windows Server 2019 is created by Microsoft, and servers are an extremely powerful machine that's designed to run constantly and provide resources for other computers. This means in mostly all cases that Windows Server 2019 is only going to be used in business settings, and because Windows Server 2019 is intended for businesses, it includes plenty of enterprise software. Some of the roles that the server can perform because of these tools. There's the Active Directory, and it's a user management service that allows a server to act as a domain controller, and instead of each user logging into a local computer, the domain controller handles all of the account authentication. And then we have the DHCP, so the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and that lets a server automatically assign IP addresses to all of the devices on the network. So like at home, your router probably handles this, but in a business setting, the staff can take advantage of the better DHCP functionality from Windows Server 2019. So you have the file and storage. So having a file server for your company is another common use. This allows you to keep important data in a central location and set permissions to control who can or cannot access specific files. And then also you have the print services, and if a business has dozens of printers across the building, it's a waste of time for staff to configure them individually for each workstation, and setting up a print server allows you to easily map printers to computers and reduce redundant work for staff. Then you have the Windows update services, and usually businesses don't want all Windows updates to come through immediately, and so by setting up a server as a Windows update controller, you can route all of the workstation updates through that server and configure specific rules for how they should work. Then also fewer hardware limitations. So Windows Server 2019, it supports up to 24 terabytes of RAM and 64 CPU sockets, and this helps run many virtual machines on a single node, a plethora of resources. So Windows Server 2019 hardening. So with user account security hardening, you can ensure administrative and system passwords meet password best practices. In particular, you need to verify that privileged account passwords are not based on dictionary word, and they're at least 15 characters long, with letters, numbers, special characters, and ensure that passwords are changed every 90 days. You can configure account lockout group policies according to account lockout best practices. You should probably disable the guest account and don't allow everyone permissions to apply to anonymous users. So for network security configuration, you can enable the Windows Firewall in all profiles, so like domain, private, public, and configure it to block inbound traffic by default. And you can perform port blocking at the network setting level, and you can perform an analysis to determine which ports need to be open and restrict access to all other ports. And you should deny guest accounts the ability to log on as a service. You should probably disable NetBIOS over TCP/IP. And you should probably remove file and print sharing from network settings. So for registry security configuration, should ensure that all administrators take the time to thoroughly understand how the registry functions and the purpose of each of its various keys. Many of the vulnerabilities in the Windows operating system can be fixed by changing specific keys. And these administrators should also configure registry permissions. This protects the registry from anonymous access. So Ubuntu 20.04 LTS stands for long-term support, and this flavor of Ubuntu is called Focal Fossil, or Focal Fossa, excuse me. And the desktop version of Ubuntu supports all normal software on Windows, such as like Firefox, Chrome, VLC, etc. It supports the Office suite known as LibreOffice, similar to Microsoft Office, with basically the same functionality, just a different graphical user interface, with some exceptions. And Ubuntu has a built-in email software. It's called Thunderbird, and this gives the user access to emails such as Exchange, Gmail, Hotmail, and other email services. There are a host of free applications for users to view and edit photos. There's also applications to manage videos, share videos, and the best feature is that it's free. It's a free operating system, and it's backed by a huge open source community, as opposed to an operating system like Windows 10, Windows 11. You have to pay money for that. Now, the flavor 20.04 LTS, as opposed to previous versions, there's a performance improvement of the GNOME shell. So there's a faster response time within the desktop environment. Also, it's an updated Linux kernel 5.4, and that brings improved hardware support and secure VPN technology with WireGuard support. Also, there's a faster ZFS support and fractional scaling. So you're going to be able to use scaling percentages, for 100%, 125, 150, 175, 200. And you don't have to run tweak commands in GNOME to enable it, because it's available by default. Then there's monitor support, revamped lock and login screen. And then they also added new dark mode and wallpaper features. There's updated applications, Firefox 75, Thunderbird 68.7, LibreOffice 6.4.2, Rhythmbox 3.4, etc. So just a plethora of features that have been added to this flavor. Now, hardening. The first step, obviously, is to make sure that the server's up to date, and you can do this by using the sudo apt update and then sudo apt upgrade -y command. For the SSH settings, you should lock the root for SSH login. So you would first remove the root account from logging into SSH, and then restart the SSH service. You should also change the SSH port, and that should hopefully reduce the number of bot attacks that are scanning for common ports. Now, after that, you would save it, restart. Protocol 2. You should enable Protocol 2, and SSH by default works with Protocol 1, and Protocol 2 is newer, more secure, and a more robust version. So Windows Firewall, it's a stateful host firewall that helps secure a device by allowing you to create rules that determine which network traffic is permitted to enter the device from the network and which network traffic the device is allowed to send over the network. It supports IPsec, and this requires authentication from any device that's attempting to communicate with the device with Windows Firewall. And when the authentication is required, devices that cannot be authenticated as a trusted device, they cannot communicate with your device. And you can also use IPsec to require that certain network traffic is encrypted. And this would prevent it from being read by network packet analyzers that could be attached to the network by a malicious user. So practical applications. Reduces the risk of network security threats. Windows Firewall reduces the attack surface of a device, providing an additional layer to the defense in-depth model. Reducing the attack surface of a device increases the manageability and decreases the likelihood of a successful attack. So, place some roles, blocks unauthorized access to your computer, and permit authorized data communications to and from your computer, like I previously described. So for hardening, you should keep the default settings. When you open Windows Defender Firewall for the first time, you can see the default settings on the local computer. And there's a reason why they are the default settings. They are set that way for a reason. They're the most secure. Also, you should understand rule precedents for inbound rules. So in many cases, allowing specific types of inbound traffic will be required for applications to function in the network. Administrators should keep rule precedence behaviors in mind when allowing inbound exceptions. And you should know how the shields up mode for active attacks works. It's an important firewall feature you can use to mitigate damage during an active attack. It's an informal term referring to an easy method a firewall administrator can use to temporarily increase security in the face of an active attack. You can do this by checking the block called incoming connections, including those in the list of allowed apps. And that setting is found in either the Windows setting app or the legacy file, which is firewall.clp, all lowercase. So IP tables. So network traffic is made up of packets, and data is broken up into smaller pieces and sent over the network, then put back together. IP tables identifies the packets received and then uses a set of rules to decide what to do with them. So IP tables filters packets based on a number of things. So tables, chains, rules, and targets. So server hardening with IP tables. So IP tables is a powerful and precise firewall, and you should configure it properly. So you can first do a full lockdown. So this would turn off receiving of all foreign packets on all the default policies. And then when you enter the final command, it'll flush out any existing rules. So you'll essentially be given a clean slate, excuse me. Also, after you've done the full lockdown, you can close the server to two operating ports, so 22 and 80, so SSH and HTTP. Or if you need more, open up the other ports depending on your device's needs. And then also, you can open up a new terminal session that provides a real-time view of packets hitting your server. And if you're trying to let a new service through, you'll see the packet show up first. And you can follow the numbers increment and see where the packet ends up. And the log rule will help you determine exactly what packet matching component is not working. So your network administrator should be able to see your network traffic, and through determining these packets, whether they're malicious or they're actually supposed to be there, you can move forward. And that concludes my presentation today on Windows Server 2019, Ubuntu 20.04, Windows Firewall, and IP tables.